Today, I've come to Reading to meet Dr. Bob Khanna and talk to him about his new wellness protocol, which is called Kickstart. Now, this has got three elements to it. It has an emerald laser treatment, followed by a T-shaped lymphatic drainage to mobilize the fat that the emerald has released, and then a kind of cycling under an infrared lamp. This is the Boldan, the infraboldan. All of this will make sense if you keep watching. Bob will explain it all. Bob, one interesting thing here is that it's not just about aesthetics, is it? It's about wellness.
Absolutely.
Now. And you've got a new program called Kickstart. So why have you brought wellness into your clinic?
Aesthetics, by its very nature, should involve well-being because, let's be honest, people who are well generally look better.
Very true.
So that's always a good starting point, isn't it? So I think it would be remiss of us not to look at well-being hand in hand with aesthetics. Well-being, of course, is a multifaceted issue. But if we, for example, look at the Kickstart program, which is targeting weight loss and in particular fat reduction, which is really the goal for most people. It's not about, I want to lose weight, because nobody really wants to lose muscle tissue and water potentially, but it's mainly the fat that people want to lose. And actually oxidation or burning of fat is actually quite a difficult thing. You know, if we look at the stats, we're getting more and more obese globally, and it's on the rise. And worryingly, it's affecting our children. And so we need to do something about this. But the reality is, in order for this to be achieved and fat reduction, it involves many, many key aspects. It's not just one thing. We need to have a look at our sleep efficiency, our hormone profiles, our stress levels, as well as, of course, our diet and nutrition and exercise. So there are many, many aspects to this. And then underlying all of this is genetic predispositions that we often have. We've got to look at our gut microbiome as well, which is, of course, very fashionable now. And this plays a big part in the overall efficiency for us as bodies to be able to burn fat or oxidize fat. So the reality is most people aren't able to do this by themselves. So what do? They look at fat loss or weight loss injections, which are of course very topical and very fashionable at the moment, and there are a lot of pros and a lot of cons to the use of these injections that we must be aware of. So my personal belief is to try and navigate this problem and try and target fat loss without the use of medication.
So the technologies you've got the emerald laser, you've got the infraboldan, and you've got the T-shape. Now, you're the first clinic globally to have put these three technologies together in a wellness package. Why have you chosen each of these? What do they do? What benefits do they bring?
In order, Alice, to target fat reduction, this needs a multi-pronged attack. We can't rely on just one technology or device or one approach. And what I found is the synergy of these three systems work really well hand in hand to actually address fat reduction. So the emerald laser, it has been shown unequivocally to be very, very powerful in enabling fat cells to shrink. So these super lazy fat cells that we develop, which are very inefficient at behaving as fat cells, are shrunk by the emerald laser. This is the 535 nanometer wavelength laser,
Painless,
which is an incredible breakthrough. It's incredible. And how this works, quite frankly, is that transient little holes or pores develop in these fat cells, and the fat is actually expelled via those little portholes and broken down into smaller units. We talk about triglycerides initially, and those triglycerides are then broken down into fatty acids. Now, the important part of this is that this is a transient system. So the emerald is very powerful in enabling this process to occur, not just on superficial fat, but also the visceral fat, which coats our organs.
Okay.
So we're working at a much deeper level and a very global level for our patients. And that's great, but of course we need help. And that's when this newly expelled fat needs to be drained efficiently within our lymphatic system.
Yes.
And that's where the T-shape 2 is very powerful, because this is vacuum lymphatic drainage. The added benefit is, of course, the radio frequency, which helps for skin tightening, which of course has to be addressed, because there's no point in actually losing fat and not addressing the loose skin, the sagging skin that can ensue afterwards.
So you're shrinking the fat, you're flushing the lymphatics, and then you're tightening the skin at the same time.
Correct.
So where does the final element, the infrabaldan, come in?
And this is the beauty. So the infrabaldan, in short, is cardio activity under infrared.
Okay,
lamps.
so this is where you're cycling, kind of sitting back in a glowing red thing?
Exactly. Like a little
looks
spaceship.
Mad space age.
It does. It does indeed.
And that's cardio. That's you're doing it hard enough.
But this is really important, because let's go back and remember that we've just expelled some of this fat from those fat cells that are now shrinking.
So that's on the loose in the body.
It's being drained into the lymphatic system by the T-shape 2. And these free fatty acids, which is the end result of this breakdown of the fat, are then expelled into the bloodstream.
Okay.
And they are in the perfect state to be oxidized or burnt for energy.
Metabolizes energy.
That's exactly how you utilize fat for energy production. So we're in the perfect situation to burn off and oxidize that fat and expel it very efficiently, and it's broken down into carbon dioxide and water. So most of it actually you exhale, and the rest you will urinate. But the point of the matter is, we're doing it at the right time, because if you miss that golden opportunity,
will it settle back in?
Exactly, it'll get recirculated and reform into the fat cell. So the point is, there's no point in expelling this fat if you're not going to utilize the energy.
A session of all that here for the Kickstart, you'll need to do one, then the other, then the third.
So essentially, the overall program will take about 2 hours. Okay, so the Emerald will take about half an hour, the T-shape 2 another half an hour, and then about 45 minutes to an hour for the infrabaldan. The point is that what we're doing is, with this tag team approach, we're utilizing these 3 wonderful technologies and clinically proven technologies to not only expel the fat and drain the fat, but utilize the fat and expel it and burn it very efficiently. The idea being, then, we're fast tracking that patient into fat reduction very, very quickly.
Okay, and how often do you need to do that? Is it twice
so the
a week?
Kickstart program is pretty well prescribed, and it's normally 10 sessions initially, usually 2 sessions a week. So it's a 5-week program that these patients are on. As the name suggests, it's a kickstart. It's a helper. People need help.
Could you talk a bit about why you're keen on reducing fat? And I know it's getting the fat into better shape as well, rather than simply taking a medication or having liposuction to get rid of the fat cells.
Fat cells are responsible for a number of very important key processes in your body. Your immune system, your blood pressure regulation, your insulin levels, your hormone profiles, just to name a few. So very, very important organ. So we mustn't just think, let's just get rid of these fat cells, because that will actually cause other problems. So all of these other procedures, such as liposuction or procedures that are designed to kill fat cells, are quite short-lived, because what you're doing is kicking the tin down the alley. What we must do is actually get these fat cells to behave, to become more efficient fat cells, so that they can behave as efficient cells to regulate all these important processes. And when we have that propensity, essentially, we become, as a fat-burning machine, a far more efficient fat burning machine.
Okay, so it's a kickstart for your fat cells as well as for the body and in
so
a
we're
wider
training,
sense.
in a sense, in a manner of speaking, we're training these fat cells to behave, to become super lean, more efficient at carrying out the procedures that they're supposed to. I'm very keen that every one of my patients that goes on this Kickstart program is given very sound diet and nutritional advice. They're optimized for burning fat.
Okay.
So essentially, for the most part, I put them on intermittent fasting so that I can regulate their caloric needs within an 8-hour window. Normally, say 12 to 8, for example, would be their eating window. And generally speaking, I'm looking at a more ketogenic type diet, so that essentially they're in ketosis for the most part, particularly when they're sleeping. And that's really important. Because what we must understand is if, for example, they're consuming vast quantities of carbohydrates whilst on this program, that's going to work against what we're trying to achieve. So if I can maintain them on a good ketogenic diet for at least 5 weeks, I can ensure that their fat burning efficiency is optimized.
And then you're offering advice around stress and managing that as well.
Key. And also sleep efficiency.
Sleep efficiency.
Sleep efficiency, all of these things are interconnected. If you don't sleep well, you're going to be more anxious, your cortisol levels will rise, you know, everything is affected. Your leptin levels,
so
the
you get more
hormone that
hungry.
controls your satiety, everything is affected. So if we can maintain stress levels, so meditation, for example, is very, very good. Yoga is very good. All of this advice is given to my patients. We regulate their diet and nutrition. We certainly have to maintain active levels, so quite apart from the Kickstart program, my patients are advised to carry out at least 4 types of exercise a week alongside the Kickstart program. Because remember, I'm constantly looking at oxidizing fat during that process. It's not just whilst you're here that you'll be burning fat. You'll get a prolonged effect with all these factors in place, which will give you the outcomes that we need.
Tell me about the results. What kind of results do people see?
We've seen outstanding results where people have lost several inches. I've got one particular lady within a 3.5 week period lost 5.5 inches around her waist, for example.
Now there's an awful lot of people who are very interested in the weight loss jabs at the moment. Can they do this program?
Absolutely. Look, I think there are pros and cons to using these weight loss jabs, these GLP-1 and agonists such as Ozempic, Mounjaro, Wegovy. I think there are some pros. The problem that I'm finding is that a lot of people that really shouldn't be on these jabs are taking them. And there are significant losses in muscle tissue as well as water and very little fat reduction in a lot of these patients. So patients are being fooled into thinking they've lost all of this weight and all of it's fat. Unfortunately, it's not that easy. And quite apart from that, we know that these injections have the side effect of course, slowing down digestion, and this gives rise and heralds a lot of these digestive stresses that we see, gastric upsets, constipation, diarrhea, which of course is not ideal.
We're always looking for a magic bullet with issues like fat loss, weight loss. So in your view, the jabs are not really the way to go. It's much better to do a holistic program that maybe is a bit harder work.
I think if you're clinically obese, and I would be looking at well over 35 BMI. I know BMI, by the way, is not a reliable determinant, but for argument's sake, if we're looking at somebody who's significantly obese, I think these weight loss jabs are useful. But of course, let's understand they're not the panacea for fat loss on its own. So I think those candidates are perfect to go on my Kickstart program to expedite fat reduction, and that's
Yeah.
the key here.
Okay.
So I think there's a synergy there.
Okay.
And then we've also got to remember, Alice, what's the exit plan for these patients? Because you can't be on these weight loss jabs forever.
No.
So what's the exit plan?
Sure.
And at some point, these patients need to come off these jabs, and then often they're left with a lot of excess skin and, of course, fat that they can't shift. They've lowered their metabolic rate. They've upset their digestive processes. Often these people need help.
Yeah.
So the Kickstart program is not just aimed at fat reduction, it's for global well-being. We're improving metabolic efficiency, that's your ability to produce energy.
Yeah.
And that also is very, very important part of the Kickstart program. So we're effectively making people better, healthier, and more able to burn fat efficiently.
So that was the latest that Dr. Bob Khanna has to offer. Hope you enjoyed watching.